Do you remember the story the Wall Street Journal broke about a birthday card Donald Trump reportedly wrote and / illustrated for Jeffrey Epstein? It was a card so apparently bawdy and revealing. It captured the nature of Donald Trump's friendship with the notorious senator. That when the Wall Street Journal first reported on it, this book put together by Ghislaine Maxwell for Epstein, Donald Trump was so mad he sued the Wall Street Journal for defamation. Well, NBC is reporting today that the House Oversight Committee is expected to get its hands on it, on the original version of that book that made Trump so mad he sued his friend Rupert Murdoch. They're going to see it next week. They're going to get to hold it and see what's inside. It will be among the unredacted versions of documents handed over to the Oversight Committee by the Epstein estate. It'll also include some flight logs, phone logs, and records of financial transactions. That's according to a source familiar with the matter. That source also telling MSNBC that any redactions will be made solely to protect the identities of known and potential victims, not anyone else, like friends and associates of Jeffrey Epstein. The documents from Epstein's estate are being handed over in response to a subpoena sent by the House Oversight Committee, which is also waiting on more Epstein files from the Department of Justice. Joining us at the table to discuss, MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. Andrew's still with us. Explain the significance of this.
It's incredibly significant, Nicole, because the documents, as they will be produced to the committee in electronic copy, they will have redactions on it. At the same time, it's our understanding that the estate is going to allow the Oversight Committee, staff or members, whoever decides to come to New York to view in person unredacted copies of the documents. Now, we understand that that will be in a secure facility. We understand that perhaps people will be asked to check their phones at the door, but they will see the whole totality of certain documents that are going to be produced early next week. They'll have the opportunity to review them in unredacted form. They won't be able to take it away with them, but essentially they'll be allowed to go into a room and see what it looks like with all of the names and with other identifying details perhaps as well. That's astonishing because so far we don't have any insight into, for example, how many people might be mentioned in that birthday book. Of course, they'll also see, if it's there, an original version of the letter that Donald Trump allegedly sent to Jeffrey Epstein. And these, I want to underscore for you, these are bound books. They were bound by a bookmaker here in New York City in 2003. It's not as if somebody just inserted a page, right? These have been bound compilations that were inherited essentially by the executors of the estate. And members and staff will get to see for themselves what that looked like in its original form. It's not an accident, by the way, that Donald Trump repeatedly refers to the Epstein matter as a hoax. He started doing that, not coincidentally, the day after he was confronted by the Wall Street Journal with the fact that the birthday book existed and that a letter from him allegedly was within it and described to him.
What does that do to his defamation case against Rupert Murdoch when all the Republicans and Democrats will sit there holding the book?
This reminds me of when Donald Trump years ago said, you know, I want to sue the New York Times, and the general counsel of the New York Times issued this letter that said, great, have at it. Because you know what comes with a civil suit? Discovery. Donald Trump doesn't do particularly well in depositions, so a lot of this is performative. The one thing I would add to what Lisa said is it's worth remembering that who will not see those documents? The American public will not see it. And it is cherry-picked in the sense that, yes, it's a bound volume, but the government has said that there's over 300 gigabytes.
What does that mean? I keep reading that and I keep saying it, but I don't really know what that means. If 300 gigabytes were a pile, how high would the pile be?
So, you know, so this is like, since I don't do math and I particularly don't do math in public, I have been quoted saying that's a lot.
Yeah, okay, me too.
But here's the thing, a gigabyte of...
But is it like a room full of documents?
Yes, so we're in this huge room.
Yeah.
imagine this entire room filled with boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes.
And the source is Kash Patel, who said on Joe Rogan's podcast that that's how much exists.
And the government has in their sort of 2-page unsigned memo saying why we're not going to do more, they confirm that
Okay.
it's over 300 gigabytes. So it's really worth noting that this is still drip, drip, drip. And yes, it is better than nothing. And yes, it is supposedly bound, so we know that it will be there or not. But the American public still is not seeing it. So if people come out and say, this is what I saw, you're going to have people like Ghislaine Maxwell saying, you're all lying. That's already happened, where she's saying every single victim has lied about her and about Jeffrey Epstein. So the American public won't see it, so they can't judge for themselves. And without getting into the math, this is the tiniest little sliver of this. This is really the proverbial grain of sand on a beach.
I was going to say, the birthday book is not the only document that we understand will be unredacted for the committee to view. It's certainly not the only document that will be produced next week by the estate. One big difference between the Department of Justice and the estate, and there are two big differences. On one hand, the Department of Justice probably has much more in its possession than the estate does, in no small part because through a search warrant, they were able to take scores of electronic evidence, hard drives, thumb drives, and the like that were never returned to the estate. But on the other hand, the estate has said repeatedly, including to me, that it will comply with all lawful process. Does that mean every single document in its possession that's been called for will be produced Monday? Certainly not. They're going to have a rolling production as they try to be responsive to it. But will that be more responsive than the Department of Justice, which has released 33,000 pages? That's about 10 boxes or banker's boxes worth of material, 97% of which, according to Democratic staff and members we've already seen, yes. It will be certainly more fulsome than what we've seen from the department and what I expect we'll see in the future from the department. The president today saying he believes that the Department of Justice has made a good faith effort to comply. That's laughable, Nicole.
Yeah, real quick, Christy Greenberg reminded me that Jeffrey Berman writes in his book about, and I remembered, I went back and read it last night, about how he kept the search of Jeffrey.
Joining us, a member of the House Oversight Committee, Congresswoman Yasmin Ansari, who is a Democrat from Arizona. So your colleagues, Congresswoman Ro Khanna, Tom Massey, you heard them. They're confident. Are you confident?
I am. I mean, I'm disappointed that we don't have the numbers quite yet. But, you know, I sat in the room with the survivors of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell for several hours listening to their heartbreaking testimonies, their stories, their account of this massive cover-up and the sex trafficking that they endured. And there were several members of the Republican Party in the room, men who, from what I saw, were listening intently and seemed deeply concerned about what they heard. And I actually spoke with Congressman Massey the other day about this. Where are the men? You just saw the photos. We have Massey and we have 3 Republican women so far. I think more men need to step up and sign this discharge petition if they truly believe in accountability. So I'm hoping that the ones who were in the room and actually heard directly from the women feel compelled to do so.
Well, I think obviously the part of the problem is that when you see Republican Tom Massey doing what he's doing, he's taking a tremendous amount of heat from Donald Trump on this. In fact, he's gotten to the point where he told Donald Trump that he wants the ads that are going after him to stop. Same party, right? So given the pressure we're seeing, I wonder what does give you confidence, since the president has been pretty successful in this term at keeping Republicans from going against him.
You know, I think things have changed. I think that the public pressure is so compelling and so serious right now on this issue. I think it was a watershed moment to see these women on the steps of the United States Capitol. I mean, the crowd was massive. You know, we had so many people there, women, some of them sharing their stories for the first time ever. And in talking to them, they feel that this time is different. Of course, I think that they are very rightfully distrustful. They're rightfully skeptical. But they said this time feels different. Now, where I'm extremely concerned is for their safety. I think that they are taking a massive risk putting themselves out there like this. They want justice and they deserve justice. And there has been now decades of a cover-up taking place in this. And it's not just about Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell. It's about all of the individuals who were complicit, enabled the abuse and the cover-up and the crimes and the sex trafficking that went on for so long. And those individuals are still out there. Those perpetrators are still out there. One of the most, something I'll never forget that the women said was that many of them, they were 13, 14 years old when this would happen. Jeffrey Epstein, by the time they were 17 years old, would essentially be done with them, tell them that they are too old. And that's when some of them were handed off to other powerful men who are still alive today, still in positions of power, and still have not been held accountable. And that's where we need to make sure that they are.
Are the three Republican women working behind the scenes to convince their Republican colleagues? We certainly saw Marjorie Taylor Greene come out at that press conference and very strongly stand with the survivors. Are they working the folks that they're close to on the Republican side?
My understanding is that they are, and I will honestly say here, I have gained respect for Marjorie Taylor Greene in particular. I think that what she is doing is very brave. I think her coming to the press conference at the Capitol, the things that she said, she actually outright offered to be the one to name names on the House floor because the women, the survivors, are now saying that maybe they will put out a list. And
Trump continues to be doomed by his own past. And I want to make this very clear. The new narrative we're hearing from the Republicans in the House, like Johnson and all of that Trump was actually secretly undercover to expose Jeffrey Epstein and the people around him, is laughable. There's no way that would ever have happened. And if it did, Trump would have never kept the secret. Everyone's like, oh, he had to keep the secret because he was Trump, remember the last time he had classified documents, classified info? They found it next to his toilet. They found it next to his toilet that he threw on his plane and flew out of Washington. This is not a man known for respecting government secrets, right? And even still, he would have always had the choice to declassify that information either of the times he was president. So I guess I want to address that and just throw that to the side. Donald Trump was not secretly infiltrating. If anything, he was a participant, or at the very least, a bystander that chose not to stop it. And this includes him participating in the general skeeviness, if not the illegality, right? I make a distinction. Drawing pictures of young women in suggestive fashion to sort of talk about the secrets and the wonderful secrets and complexities of his buddy Jeff. Like, it's so creepy, and we still don't know everything yet. We still don't know everything yet because one, there's a lot of tentacles around this, but also the Trump administration refuses to just openly and honestly share the info. So we're reliant on brave victims standing up and doing it themselves in some cases, but also having to piece together these individual items that are floating out in the ether. But any way you slice it, Donald wasn't an informant. He was an insider in all the worst ways.